Hello, good evening, and welcome to Purpose University. Is our second free session, and I hope you begin to invite your brothers and your sisters to come in. This evening promises to be really exciting. There is a lot that we will learn together this evening. And yes, so welcome, welcome, welcome. I can see someone has come in already. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining and signing up to be in this class. So the subject matter of today, or focus today, is native abilities. I'm sure you'll be wondering what that means. But before we get into it at all, my name is Bidemi Mark-Mordi, and like you know, I am the VC of Purpose University. And I keep saying, do not ask me what it means. But I promise you that it's not what you think it means. So welcome to Purpose University this evening, where we'll be discussing native abilities. Today's segment, or today's session, will be broken into 6 different subtitles, so that for ease of navigation and for ease of understanding, I'm just going to keep it swift as short per subheading. But the entire talk or teaching is called native abilities. So what is native ability? Native, of course, means something that comes easy to you. In the expression native abilities, I'm looking at the things that come easy to you. But beyond what comes easy to you, I'm looking at the things that are found in your natural abode, the things that come with you. Those days will say that someone came from the shop with it. So everything about native abilities on the journey to purpose has to do with what you came from the shop with. And this is broken into 5 different headings. It is found in your most your native or your natural habitat or abode. It is the capacity, and the teaching is the teaching expectation for this evening is to help you hone your capacity to take, or awaken you to the capacity to take these 6 things that we'll be talking about this evening and put them together into one spot that makes living a life of purpose interesting and easy to do. So I said there are 6 things that we'll talk about. The first thing we'll talk about is our force dominion. The second thing is our value neutrality of our gifts. The third thing we'll talk about this evening is our first influence. The fourth thing is our experiences. The fifth thing will be our environment, and the sixth thing will be your sweet spot. So the first 5, your force dominion, your value neutrality, your first experience, your environment, and your first influence, your experiences, and your environment all come together to get you to your sweet spot. Your sweet spot is where you get to, and you're able to effortlessly live a life of purpose. But I go ahead of myself. I don't want to run that swiftly. Let me tell you how we're going to run today. So this evening, I'm going to teach each of these subheadings that I have mentioned to you for between 7 and 8 minutes, or max 10 minutes per subheading. And then at the end of it all, everyone will have a time to do a Q&A. But as I'm teaching, there's someone that is collating the questions. So as I'm teaching, if you have a question concerning a particular subheading, what I need you to do is make sure that you write out your question. Collate your question, write out your question clearly, so that the person who is collating the questions will collate them. Now, at the end of the 1 hour that I'm going to teach, I'm going to, hopefully Facebook will let us, I'm going to do my best to bring someone on camera who will take your questions and interview me with your questions. So it has to be tidy. What that means is the questions that don't come in by the time we get in the Q&A session, we will probably not take those questions. So, but that's that. Now I have an offer from the main course, Purpose University. I want to put front load all of this to you. within the lifespan of this course, of this teaching today, which will be about an hour, 30 minutes, if you decide that you still want to sign up for Purpose University, for the duration of this teaching alone, you can still get Purpose University for 75,000 naira. From tomorrow morning, it goes to the 97K. We already have over 50 people registered. But I know some people were waiting for their salaries to come in, and I've had a few people ask me. So I said, okay, what's going to do is we are on offer. We are on offer right now within the lifespan of today's teaching for the same 75,000 naira. But after that, we're done. If you want to get in the course, then you have to pay the full amount or less, unless someone tells me that there's something else that I ought to do. So now that I have all of that first front load, let's begin. First dominion, what is it? First dominion, what is it? The last time we talked about the case for purpose. If you remember, I talked briefly about the first dominion. Your first dominion is that thing that God has endowed you with, as found in Genesis chapter 1:26. In Genesis chapter 1:26, you see that God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion. And I said that first dominion, even though it sounds like the domineering or the dominance that you know about, does not refer to authority or commanding. What that refers to is the gifting inside of you. The seed of your second dominion is your first dominion. Now, when you look at the seed of when I talk about the seed of your first dominion, it can be the capacity to use words as I have. It can be compassion. Whatever your gift is, it is your first dominion. We call it the first dominion because when you process it properly, then what is going to happen is it will now enable you and empower you to live in your second dominion. So your first dominion is the gifting of God that He's given to you. Remember that the topic we're looking at is native ability. So when we talk about first dominion and we say it is the gift that God has given you, it means that it is native to you. It is native to you. It is embedded in your DNA. It lives inside of you. Whether you would process it to become a second dominion or not is now left for you and your discipline and your capacity for clarity and the many, many other things that happen between the place of the first dominion and the second dominion. But in the first dominion, you have all your gifts and your talents and your capacity. The patience, the capacity to be patient is a first dominion for someone. So let me give you an analogy. Somebody will think that someone who is living a life of purpose must be educated, must have so many degrees, must be catering to a lot of big men and stuff like that. And that last week I talked about, or the last class, I talked about the organizer. And I said that whatever it is that you have the capacity to do, as long as you are able to do it well and it benefits mankind, it glorifies God, it satisfies you, then it is part of what God has called you to do. So I am just, what's the thing? You know that this is not the main course, right? So I'm going to keep it short and swift. If it's something that you are interested in finding out more about, then you have to, even if you can't make this first stream, you want to sign up for the wait list for the next stream, because the next stream will begin almost immediately we finish this first stream. So what are the questions that help you discern your first dominion? Questions like, what comes easy to me? Questions like, what excites me? Questions like, what energizes me? Questions like, what do I readily serve others with? Questions like, what am I known for? Questions like, what have I invested the most in? Now, you don't even need to be a soothsayer if you come around me to know that words are my forte. Words form the bedrock of my first dominion, something I call your superpower. Now, words are my forte, and because words are my forte, I think that my greatest investment, like other women, is not gold or is not jewelry. My greatest investment over the course of my life is books. I started to invest in books from when I was 8 years old. My mother bought books for me over and over and over. I am fascinated with words. I love words. I mean, when I see a new word, it just excites me. There's a fascination for words that just captures my attention. And if I have ever touched your life before, you will know that the bulk of the things that I have used to touch your life have to do with words. So everybody has a first dominion like that. Again, I'll go through the questions. Your first question will be, what comes easy to me? Now, a lot of people think that because it is easy means that it is not valuable. No, that's not what it is. It is easy because it is in your first dominion. It is easy because it's been embedded in your spirit. It is easy because you came from the shop with it. And so I can look at my younger sister who can do everything. You know, she doesn't mind what we call manual labor. She enjoys it. It excites her. If she comes to clean your house, you whose house is being cleaned will be the one that is tired because she will lift everything. I'm not interested in that. But the difference between me and my sister is she actually enjoys doing that work. I enjoy what I'm doing now. So what is it that comes easy to you to do? It may look from a distance, someone is watching you and thinks this is such hard work. But for you, it's just easy. It is effortless. It is indicative or a pointer to your first dominion. What excites you and energizes you? It doesn't matter how tired I am. If you give me a microphone or you put me in front of people, I will have something to say. And it doesn't matter whether my eyes are closing by themselves, I will get it said. I will say what I need to say. After that, I may just fall flat on my face. But within that time that I need to do what I'm supposed to do, I'm energetic. I'm energized to do that thing that I'm doing. The third question that I said you should ask yourself in tracing your first dominion is, what do I readily serve people with? What is it that I readily serve people with? Well, at no cost, I will serve people with it. It is my service point every single time. When you understand what that is, it is a pointer to your first dominion. The next question is, what are you known for? I was really small when people told my parents, where people would say to me that I can speak. I was really small. I always knew how to string words together. So I'm known for it. I'm known for it. I'm known for it. And anywhere I put in the work, they will always pick me to speak for them. Even in this old age, in 2018, I went for a course abroad for 5 weeks. At the end of that course, they picked me as one of the valedictorians. It wasn't because I asked for it. As a matter of fact, I was really laid back. I was getting my work done, but I was laid back because I had no point to prove. God had told me, go in there, just go learn and come out. But out of it, it was the women in the group that said, Bidemi, be our spokesperson. And that was how I landed the job of the valedictorian. And I dare say that when we were done, everybody in the hall did say to me that I did well. My point is, it comes easy to me. It excites and it energizes me. It is what I can readily serve people with. It is what most people know me for. And it is the thing that I have invested the most for. Even this week, I bought a course, $500. Why would I buy a $500 course in the middle of a pandemic where everyone is saving money? I bought it because it feeds my first dominion. And so whatever it takes for me to continue to get better at it, I will continue to do. Now, when you aggregate the answers to these questions, and these are not exhaustive, because of the time that I have, this is what I can give you on that subject matter. When you aggregate the answers to these questions and you follow them, as you turn the curve, I promise you, you will land at a distinct understanding of your first dominion. You will land at a distinct understanding of your first dominion. Again, this is Native Abilities in Purpose University. My name is Bidemi Mark-Mordi. We'll quickly go on to the second subheading of today's teaching. So the second subheading is value neutrality. A lot of people, when my youngest son Joshua was really small, he was one young child that you couldn't entice with what you were entice other children with. So Joshua could come for a birthday party, but he had decided that day that he didn't want ice cream. there is absolutely nothing anyone is going to say to Joshua to take ice cream. If you offer him ice cream, he could say to you, I don't want ice cream. Can I have a cup of Milo? If you say to him, oh, there's no Milo, we only have ice cream. It's really tasty. It's delicious. Please try ice cream. My son can stay in that party, through that party, and not taste ice cream. And so the adults around us started to call him stubborn. Because when he says no, he means no, and he will stick to his no. I had to sit them down, I mean the adults, to re-educate them not to call my son stubborn. Because what I saw was a strong-willed child, a child who knew what he wanted, and he wasn't going to be tossed around by the wind of other people's decisions. Now, that is a really great trait. But because the people on the receiving end just want him to toe their line, they called it stubbornness. The point of value neutrality of your gifts is that every gift has a flip side. What I call passion, you may call, what's the word? You may call brashness. I don't know whether that's a good word for it. What I call being carefree, which is not a bad thing. That is, I'm never bogged down by the things that people are thinking and stuff like that. You may call reckless. It just depends on where you are coming from, how you see what it is that we're looking at, and what experiences you've had to color the thing that is in front of you. All of that to say to you that whatever gift you have, there is nothing like a good gift. There is nothing like a bad gift. There is nothing like a negative gift. There is nothing like a positive gift. How do I know that? God created everyone in his image. We work out the likeness, but we all are created in his image. And because we are created in his image, here is the challenge. There is no way God will create an evil person. So someone will say, what about Judas Iscariot? How did he end up where he ended up? He made a decision. Everything about your gifts is tied to a decision. Whether your gift will be positive or your gift will be negative, it is tied to a decision. You will say, how about those people who are armed robbers? They had a good gift. The capacity to be ingenious enough to know who has wealth. They could have been investment portfolio managers. They could have been people who are very persevering and could do things that other people could not do. But they decided to take their gift, the capacity to be bold and fearless, for instance, and decided to plug it into negativity. We are the ones that color our gift positive or negative. When God gives us a gift, he gives us a value neutral gift. Remember that I talked a lot about free moral agency. So because we have free moral agency, you can decide that even though God gave me a great gift, I'm going to not use it well. It's a choice we make. It's a choice we make. If you are in the IT world, there are a group of people called ethical hackers. These are hackers who come and they hack a program or whatever, some IT-based software, just to show the owner that his back end is not as tight as it ought to be, for instance. And then they do that and they show you where the loopholes are. And usually companies who are smart will quickly hire them because they have a gift and they're using it well. Now there are other people who are hackers who will take this same gift and use it to hack someone's bank account and clean out their money. It is the same exact knowledge and skill that they have. The person who decided to use it to clean out another man's bank account is the one that made the choice to use it that way. But our gifts in God are value neutral. Now, when I talk about my son Joshua, up to tomorrow, when Joshua doesn't want something, he doesn't want it. But let me flip it on you. Of my 3 children, Joshua is the hustling one. If Joshua wants you to give him this remote in white, there is nothing that you will do that will make Joshua accept a black one. And he knows how to wear you down until you give it to him in white. He's very clear about the things that he wants from his life, and you can tell that he's working towards getting there. Why? Because what his uncles in the past were calling stubbornness, I was able to make him understand that it is being strong-willed. And there are places you go to, that is the only gift that will serve you. So your gifts are value neutral. Now, because we tend to criticize what we do not understand, most of us, while we were growing up, have had our gift criticized to the point of dormancy. So someone keeps saying, you are too forward. You are too forward. Keep quiet there. And I'll tell you a story. This happened to me, and it is really true. I was that child who was very precocious when I was small. I could speak my mind. It didn't matter who was in the room. I was the one-man live band for my parents' guests when they came calling. But by the time I started to turn 9, 10, 11, 12, they started to say to me that I spoke too much. They started to say to me, keep quiet, you talk too much. It's not everyone you should talk to. And I started to come to the awareness that people were uncomfortable with the gift that I had. So by the time I got 16, 17, I had dumped up altogether. I wasn't talking to anyone anymore. And I carried it like that from 16, 17 until I was in my late 20s before I found my voice again. Do you understand this? So it wasn't a bad gift. That's the same gift I'm using to serve you. But my parents and the adults that were around me at that point saw being outspoken as the same as being disrespectful. But you know that's not the case, right? So they made me clam up. And in my clamming up, I clammed up to the extent that things happened to me that if it were when I was younger, I would have screamed and I would have spoken about them, and I just took them because I didn't know what it was I could say that would be disrespectful or what I would say that would not be disrespectful. Do you understand this conversation? So your gifts are value neutral. Every time I talk to women, couples, and maybe I'm saying to them, they're trying to distill their journey individually, I would always say to the wife, so describe your husband in 5 words or in 3 words. And so you will hear the wife say, my husband is too careless. He takes too much risk. He takes too much risk. And then you will hear the husband say, no, I'm adventurous. I want to get us somewhere. Now, both of them are looking at the same exact trait. But because the wife is the one that is a bit more laid back, she thinks that the capacity for her husband to pursue what he wants is risk. And meanwhile, the husband is looking at the wife in her carefulness, and he's saying to her, you are afraid. Do you understand this? So every gift that God gives to us is value neutral. It is how you deploy it that determines whether it is negative or it is positive. The onus, therefore, is on each and every one of us who holds a gift to carefully choose how we will deploy or interpret our gifts. I want to quickly move on to the third subheading because it doesn't look like I'm doing very well with time. The third one is our first influence. You know, a lot of us are sent to school by our parents. But do you know that 50% of our education are in our formative years, and our parents are our first professors, they are our first instructors, they are our first tutors. And so you find that when you are trying to find the nexus or for your assignment using your native abilities, you must take into account your first influence, which are usually our family members. Now, some people, their fathers were not present, and that has affected their native ability or has contributed to their native ability. So you can't even say my father wasn't here, so he did not, he did not color my ability, my native ability. Your parents can actually color your native ability, whether they were present in your life or they were absent. What does this mean? It means that a life of purpose is an intentional bringing together of your abilities, your strengths, your skills, and your decisions. Now, these 4 things come together, when you bring them together properly, they form an influence with which you go out and you begin to lead and you begin to order things in your life. But the one that will first point to your ability is your parent. Or the one that will first disregard your ability is your parent. The one that will first highlight your strength is your parent. The one that will first numb down your strength is your parent. The one that will help you take a raw gift and distill it into a skill by putting responsibility on you is your parents. The one that will leave you without boundaries, and then at the end of the day you can't lift a finger to save your life, is your parents. The one that teaches you how to make life-altering decisions is your parent. So your family plays a vital role in arriving at or understanding your native ability. Our parents are our first influencers. And if I'm thinking about it and I'm thinking about my life, I told you about words. From when I was 8 years old, once a week, and I mean, no, once every 5 days, because I grew up in a place where the major market was once in 5 days. Once every 5 days, my mother would buy me a new novel. We had this bookseller who used to come, and he knew my mom would always come to pick novels for me. So he would, whatever new novels he finds, he would keep them. And so when my mom would come, he would say, these are the new ones. And then my mom would pick what she could afford. And then sometimes she would reserve some for the next week, because I was plowing through these books like no man's business. My love for books today were from my mom. When I enter a bookshop, my molecules begin to jump. There's nothing that excites me like a bookshop. I can come into a bookshop, people think I shop for clothes, but I can come into a bookshop and I'll be there for hours on end, just picking books. In those days where I used to go to Latana in Lagos, when I go there is no way I will walk out of that place without spending 50,000 naira. It is the reason why if you come to my conference, you would always take a book away. I love books. I don't joke with books. But my mom is the one that fanned the embers of my love for books. My mother is the one that fanned the embers for my love for books. My love and hate for the stage was brought about by my parents. My parents were the ones who showed me how it was possible to just shine on stage, because they would give me money, because I would do whatever I watch, I could do it all over. But as I started to grow, and of course as a child, I didn't know boundaries, they started to tell me to shush. They started to hush me up. And before I knew what was happening, I'd given that example before. I was no longer doing as much as I could do with the gift that was native to me. So when we're talking about our native abilities, one other way that you discover your native ability is to take a look at your first influences. What were the things that your parents modeled to you? What were the things that your parents modeled to you? Your first influence point and shape you in preparation for living from your DNA. In delivering on your assignment, the first things that you encountered at home go a long way to determine how you would become. So for most of us, this influence was exerted by our parents and family members. The thing with our first influence on teachers is that they didn't need to say anything. That's the catch about your first influence. Your first influencers didn't even need to use words. Your father just needed not to be coming home every evening. And it registers in you that it is okay as a young man to grow up and not come home every evening. Your mother doesn't need to sit you down and give you 5 ways to insult your father. You saw it play out. And so you can grow up and get married, and except the Lord helps you, insulting your spouse will be your default mode when you start, your first influence. So you want to ask these questions when you are trying to discern your first influence. What did my first influencers celebrate in me? What did my first influencers celebrate in me? You want to ask yourself, what did they hold me accountable for? Last Thursday, when I was talking to my son on the BMM Live, I asked him if we had ever pressured him because he was the firstborn. And he said yes. He said that the fairest conversation he had with his father, and he would never forget, was that his father told him that he was responsible to take care of his younger ones. So he feels responsible to make sure that his younger ones don't make mistakes. I mean, that is a pretty heavy burden for a young man to bear. But his father voiced it to him, and as far as he's concerned, his father's word is law. And so he has keyed into that, and he has lived his life like that. So even when he should have focused on how does he get out of a situation that he's found himself, when he should have thought about himself, he was not just thinking about himself, he was thinking of his two siblings and how that his failure or his success would impact upon those ones. Our first influences. What were the things that they celebrated in you? What were the things that they held you accountable for? What were the things that were their predominant traits that you liked? What are the things that were their predominant traits that you liked? What are the things that are the predominant traits that you have, that your parents had that you liked? I liked from my father, I liked that he was accountable. My father was very accountable. That's number one. The other thing I saw in my father, and I had to find it in the man I was married, was my father took care of us. We never had a school fees show up, and my father didn't have school fees ready. It never happened. My mother would do everything else that we need, like buy clothes for us, but you see, paying school fees, my father never failed. My father was the one, because I have step siblings, my father was the one that would send people to beg my step siblings because they were not exactly interested in education to get an education. So I saw that from my father, and I really celebrated it. I really celebrated it. I really celebrated it. I did. And I'm grateful to God that he gave me a man who takes that seriously as well. Because I don't know how I would have done if I got married to a man who couldn't do that I saw my father do. My first influence. Now you say, is that supposed to be the norm? I don't know. It's what I saw, and I liked it. The other question that you want to ask is, you want to ask yourself, what decisions did my first influencers make that affected me? That affected me. One of the first decisions that my parents made, my father made, that affected me for a long time, and I think actually still affects me today, is that he didn't give us a nuclear family. It wasn't just myself, it wasn't just himself, my mother and my siblings by my mother. We had step brothers and sisters and we didn't get along really. And that for a long time colored my view of marriage. For a long time, that colored my view of marriage. It colored my view of marriage. And so it was for a long time, the only thing, I wanted a man who understood that marriage was between a man and a woman and their children. My father didn't do that well for me. And so it affected me in ways that I'm grateful to God again, because God has the capacity to right some wrong things in our lives. In the marriage that I have, he righted that. And so because of that, I'm confident and I'm careful. You know, I'm not, careful is not the word I'm looking for. I am comfortable in the marriage that I have. So when you talk about your first influence, you want to ask those questions of your first influencers. And remember, your first influencers are the ones that you grew up in the same house with. Again, they point and they shape you in preparation for living for your assignment. Our fourth subheading is experiences. It is experiences. I remember this time I was about 3 years old, and there was this lady that my mother bought ogi from. So one day, it was a Saturday morning, my mother had to run somewhere. We had my cousin that I called my uncle because he was so much older than us that was living with us. He worked, but it was a Saturday, so on Saturday he would bring out the clothes and he would wash them. He would clean the house because from Mondays to Friday he worked. And that Saturday he was at the side of the house and he was washing. And this lady, who my mom had said, when the lady comes, just collect the ogi. So she came and I collected the ogi. My mom had given me money and I picked up the money and I gave to her for what she had delivered. As I turned, she turned and she went to my mother's dressing table and there was some money there and she took the money. But I was a child and I was playing, so she thought I didn't see her. She took the money and then she came out and she said bye-bye to my uncle and she left. When my mom came, that became an issue because my mom started to look for her money. I was 3 years old. But I walked up to my parents and I said to them, the lady that came to deliver ogi was the one that took the money. So I remember my father had a motorcycle then. So he took my mom and myself and we rode to this lady's house. They lived in the neighborhood. When we got there, she also lived with her uncle. So my parents stated the case and said we came to collect the money. And she started to try to hush me. She said, no, she didn't take money. The only money she took from the house was the money that I had given her as payment for the ogi. At 3 years, I would not be hushed. I stood up and I said no. And I described for her exactly how she took the money, where she hid the money when she took it, and how long it took for her to go, because I was that observant. By the time she realized and her uncle was paying attention that I knew details about her that nobody else would know. Like she was wearing something, she was tying a wrapper, and underneath her wrapper she had a skirt, and she had something, those pouches that market women use, that she puts the money. And I said to her, it was this color, that's where you put it. She knew that she had been found out. Eventually she went inside, she brought the money, the exact same money. And my parents took it and thanked her and we left. My point is, that experience taught me that if I could just get up and be bold, that I had an eye for detail, I could sense, I can always smell a room. I can always sense where there's joy in a room, where there's sadness in a room. My antenna was sharp. I could always tell. That experience validated my capacity to stand up, and that validated that when you tell the truth and when you stand for righteousness, people will try to shut you down, yes, but there are other people that will celebrate you, because when we got home that day, my parents celebrated me. There are many, many memories of my childhood, but that one stands out. And it has remained with me till this day. I can see the woman's face. I can see their bungalow where they lived, and I was about 3 years old. I wasn't older than 3. That was an experience that colored my native ability. And then there was another experience as I grew and I started to realize that I was speaking less and less. I wasn't bold to say what was on my mind, and that meant I was bottling a lot of things in. And I started to go through this cycle of depression every year. Depression colored my native ability to the extent that the day I broke free, I made a commitment to heaven that as long as I can, somebody wrote a book, and that book helped me to come out of where I was. I told God that I will write as many books, that there will not be darkness in the lives of the people that I'm in contact with, as long as I have an answer. I will beat them over the head with the answer until they get it. That experience colored my native ability. And so when you are around me and I keep pushing and pushing and pushing you, it was because there was a day I was sinking and someone from a distance pulled me out. So I am committed to pulling people out. That was colored by my experience, my earlier experiences in life. The fifth sub is our environment. Our environment. Our environment. When I started out, I was in a church and I received a great deal of encouragement to start ministry. My father in the Lord then was fantastic. He poured oil on me. He prayed on me. He validated me. He gave me opportunities to do the work. Then the Lord now told me to start something, and I started. And somehow, in that same environment, there was someone who, I don't know whether she was threatened or she was unhappy. Whatever it was, I don't know. And I'm sure that my immaturity did not help matters. Long and short of the matter is that when they started to come, people were attending this fellowship that I was hosting once every 2 weeks. And she told them never to come again. And so all of a sudden, a meeting that I will convene and I will have 15, 20 people, whittled down to 7, and I was really discouraged. I was so discouraged that I wanted to pack it up. In that time, I heard God say to me, do not continue to, if you want to catch a different kind of fish, stop fishing in the same pond. But it was dangerous, it was scary for me to try any other pond. This was the only pond I knew. Honestly, it took me all of 18 years before I truly tried another pond. And it is in trying another pond that I know all of you, at least all of you know me, or know about me, and I know about you. Your environment can affect your native ability. Your environment can affect your native ability. The thing is, now that I think about it, I wish when God said to me, stop fishing in the same pond, I had the guts to follow his instruction. Because when I eventually did, the way it turned out was what my dream showed me. Growing up, I grew up in a village. And I was surrounded by a lot more lack of vision than I saw clarity. That environment in my mind had the capacity to keep me down. So I was just biding my time. I kept telling myself, the day you finally get the opportunity to leave this place, you can't come back until you make something of yourself. I have thought about it, and if I had stayed in that environment, the best thing I would have been a really local teacher who was really good at her job. But that was not what I saw. From really young, I saw myself speaking to a crowd. And it wasn't a village crowd that I saw myself speaking to. So when I finished my first degree, I entered the vehicle and I said to my father, I'm going to Lagos. And I said to myself, to come back to this village, I would either have made it or I would have died. It was one of the two. There was no third option. I would either make something of my dream as I entered this vehicle to go to Lagos, or I would die and they would bring me back home. I was never going to come back to settle in that environment. Now, leaving that environment was great for me. But coming into a brand new environment in Lagos where I knew nothing, life was not what I thought it would be. I had thought that maybe when I got to Ojota, that they would have welcomed me with a party and then they would just take me into one mansion and my new life would begin. But of course, that wasn't what happened, yeah? So I took a lot of hard knocks. There were many things again that happened to me in Lagos. But the thing is, I had a dream before me. There was no way I was going to go back to my environment to become like everyone that I knew. So what was going to happen was I was going to brave it. I was going to swallow a lot of things here in Lagos until I arrived where I was going. Now, in making that decision, there was one other decision I made. One other decision that would have made me go back to the village no matter what was that if I married someone from my village, then I will have to go back. And so I made a decision and I told myself, I will not even marry. It doesn't matter how much I love a guy from my village. Thankfully, I didn't fall in love with any one of them. I wasn't going to marry a guy from my village because I was running from that environment as much as I can. What is the point of this particular subheading? That your environment can shape or break you. Your environment can shape or can break you. So when you get in an environment, or right now in the environment you are at, you need to ask yourself, what is this environment adding to me, or what is it taking away from me? Because unless you truly know, You may never be able to understand your native ability and give it wings to fly. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? I would appreciate if someone else on this call is not trying to teach this class. I am the one teaching this class. So please don't come. It's rude and it's disrespectful for you to come to my space and try to I don't know what you're trying to do. So please stop. Thank you very much. I'm outspoken, so I need to say this. When we finish from here, you can step out and do whatever you want to do. But while I'm in charge of this class, do not disrespect this time that I'm giving you. Please, let it stop, okay? Thank you. So the final thing, the final sub is the sweet spot. Now, the sweet spot is simply the nexus of all of these things that I have talked about earlier on. Your first dominion, your first dominion, your value neutrality, the value neutrality of your gifts, your first influence, your early experiences, and your environment. When you understand these 5 things, they come and they form what we call a fulcrum. In the middle of that is what I call your sweet spot. Because in the middle of that, what you will find is an aha moment that would distill from you and just explain for you what it is that you are doing and how, or what it is that you should be doing. I was talking to someone today and I was trying to describe the sweet spot to her. And she said to me that the sweet spot is a place where it will stretch you, but it will not stress you. It will stretch you, but it will not stress you. Because when I call it the sweet spot, I don't want you to see a picture of where it becomes easy. It doesn't quite become easy in its execution. But it becomes easy because now you have an understanding and you're willing to do all of the hard work that you need to do, regardless of how long it will take to get you where you need to go. Does this make sense? So when you get in that space of the sweet spot, you begin to find that you are able to understand why you need to persevere. You understand why you need to give yourself another chance. You understand why you need to take 2 steps back and look critically at your first influences and decide which one of the things that you learned there that you will take and which one of those things that you will never take, you will not take, or that you will drop. Now, your sweet spot is the place where you begin to make sense of what will ultimately become your assignment. Does this make sense? So every one of these things are supposed to come together to bring you to the place of a sweet spot. It's supposed to bring you to the place of a sweet spot. So you quickly get to the place of a sweet spot, and then you begin to say, oh, now I see. Oh, that was what was happening. Now, what I have told you so far, as I begin to round off my teaching time, is that everything about your native abilities matter. And remember that the native ability is a blanket for all of these things that blanket expression for all of these things that I have talked about. Now, what you find in this place of your native ability or in your sweet spot is that you begin to pay more attention to the things that had happened before. Now, I need you to pay attention and read my lips as I say these things. Everything that is your native ability matters. But everything that is your native ability does not matter. My point is, because someone would, when I talked about experiences, they will remember that they were raped or abused as a child. It matters that you remember it. It matters that you should process the pain. But it does not matter enough to keep you. Is this making sense? So while everything that I've talked to you about today matters, and that is the tricky part, and that's what part of what will help you make sense of our Purpose University. The tricky part is that everything that I've said to you today matters. It matters for your journey. But everything that I've talked to you again does not matter if it will keep you standing. Now you say that is a parable. It's not a parable, it's just as easy. It's simply straightforward. That there is nothing in your native ability that you cannot surmount. As important as your native ability is, there is nothing in your native ability that you cannot ride over. You just need the right tools. You need the right people holding your hand to get you to the place where your native ability makes sense. Now, why is this important? This conversation we're having this evening, if you would live a life of purpose, why is it important? It is important because as you begin to distill these things and you begin to make a sense of them, what you are going to be finding is that you will throw up many things, especially when you are looking at your first dominion. You will find that you have many things that you can do. There are many gifts that you have. And the idea is that when you have too many gifts, because some of us are genius like that, we just know how to do many things, okay? But when you are there like that, the tendency is you want to do everything. And that makes you a jack of all trades, master of none. As many and as much as your giftings are, and as excellent as you can be in most of them, there is one that is what I call your leverage gifts. Now, of course, I can't tell you here that your leverage gift is this because I haven't interacted enough with you. But a lot of us are pushing the wrong thing. Maybe because it's what we went to school to study. Maybe it's because that's what someone has told you sells. Maybe it's because many things. Some of us have taken on things that were just meant to feed us for a season, and we have built our entire life around those things. So what you find when you truly process your native ability is that, yes, you find your sweet spot, but when you work your sweet spot properly, it should take you to your leverage gifts. Now, can Sister B lead you to your leverage gift? I promise you I can. Can I do it now? No. You have to buy the course to know that. So as I come to the end of my teaching, if you have questions, I hope you have asked your questions. But know that there's something called the leverage gifts. And know that everything that we have said today, as important as they are not that important. Now that means that you have a choice to make on how you will utilize and how you will not utilize it. Does this make sense? So here is where we are today. I've taken you through a crash course in your native ability. I've said it to you in as few words as I'm able to say them to you. But there is more if you want to truly get to understand this. Now, I used to be one of those people who will come and just take the free stuff and go away. And of course, I stood at the same spot for a long time. I had to get to the point where I think there was a course I bought. And over time, from paying for the course itself, to traveling, to attend some parts of the course, to hotel in that time, I have, between myself and my husband, we've purchased the course that at the end of that course, we have spent about $18,000. And so when you sit down, you hear us speak. We are not speaking just from skimming from the surface. We're skimming from the things that were at the bottom, that people who had gone ahead had taught us to do. A lot of us are not patient enough to do the work of learning before we set out. And so we hit a brick wall and we're seated there and we can't move. And then a lot of us are claim to be very smart. They think they are very smart. They'll call you up and they will now tell you, I have gift 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Which one of them is my leverage? If you send me the message, it's voicemail because I will not respond to you. But really, I think that I have brought you a bit further in your journey to understand this journey into purpose. Do you understand it? So we're going to open the lines right now. The payment details will be posted. If you want to take advantage of the 75,000 offer for just this night, then please, the cost of purpose investing is 75,000 naira. That's early bird. The cost itself for the course is 97,000 naira. But an early bird ended on Saturday, right? Yes. But if you are interested, because a couple of people said to me, oh, it was because I was waiting for my salary, I couldn't jump in the early bird. So for those kinds of people, we're opening it up right now. And Julia, please help me post that account number that I gave you. If you make a transfer, then we will take you through the process to join this diet. We still have about 10 slots left. But, yes, 75,000 is today only. If you call me tomorrow morning, it will be 97K. Sorry. I give a lot of stuff out, but this is not one of those things. And you will appreciate